Hey everyone, welcome back to BRAP. It is Wednesday night, regular scheduled program, and actually got a lot to talk about. A lot of gaming related news to talk about. So we're gonna get that here in just a second. But I want to welcome Hamp, and then the rest of the BRAP panel will be jumping here shortly. But what's going on, Hamp? How are you this evening, sir?
Hey yo,
Chicken fry. What is it that you yell in Halo? Did I get that right?
oh man, yeah, all kinds of stuff. Anything that has to do with crispy fried chicken when I hit somebody with the what is it with the sentry burner,
Is that what it's called?
sentry beam or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Central. Yeah. It's always great because we'll be playing Halo Infinite, and we'll hear this random, what is it? Chick-fil-A.
Or crispy fried or Popeyes.
Yeah. Oh, it's great, man. It's great. It's a great motivator, man. It's like actually get you a little hyped. You know. So
when you see that out of the corner of your eye, you just catch that little disintegration animation going on.
Dude,
over there.
let me tell you something. When I hear chicken fried, I try to and you're yelling it, and a corner of my eye, I see the disintegration animation and like the beam. Oh my God, it's great. It's great. I think I've seen you take out people like jumping midair. That's probably the best.
It is. That's very fun. That Michael Jordan fadeaway jumper. That's what I call that. That gets him every time.
Oh, that's yeah. No, it's and then when you get the cinder shot and you just see like disintegration everywhere. That's great. That is great. I tell you,
I did play like hot doo-doo water though last night when we played with Delhi. That was a bad night.
Well, in fairness, I mean, we were playing with Deli and Slow-Mo, so it was like instant, you play Halo Infinite with those guys, it's like instant, instant sweats. I mean, you got to wear extra deodorant, you got to keep hydrated, drink water. I mean, it was definitely very, very sweaty. I still don't understand I got to be careful because I don't want to get demonetized here, but the T animation, if you know what I mean. I don't understand why people are doing that. It's just, come on, like, let's not do that. Let's not do that, especially when you're losing. Like, you shouldn't.
That's right. It's very weird. I don't know that we've run into a winning team that does that. It's always the dudes who we wind up spanking that do it. So.
No, it really is, man. It really is. But it was the struggle was real tonight, Hamp. I was like, do I podcast or do I go play Halo Infinite again tonight? Because I did have a good time running Halo Infinite with the squad last night, even though it was super sweaty. Halo's always a good time, man. Always a good time. And we're going to talk about Halo Infinite tonight at 343i more specifically because there was some breaking news that was broke by Bloomberg. Although, I don't know, man. Bloomberg, their track record more recently, Amp, hasn't been too good.
Yeah, their editor in chief is Maury Povich.
Oh wow! Does Ricky Lake report directly to him?
That's right. Jerry Springer has a corner office.
Oh man, Jerry Springer works for HR. Yeah, they. So I was like, I'm reading the article by Jason Schreier. I'm wondering, Jason, is 343 got to come out and call you out here in the next 24, 48 hours? Maybe we'll see.
I don't know that they'll call him out, but as the record should well show, I am not a fan of Jason Schreier and hardly anything of anywhere near being a believer in anything that he writes.
Yeah, he almost seems like an ambulance chaser. But he is. But the one thing I don't like about Jason Schreier, honestly, is like his he doesn't like handle criticism well, and he blocks people.
Or not even criticism. I mean, he can't even stand being asked a question.
No, he can't. It's like, God forbid you ask him a question, and you could actually ask him something that's relevant, like and be and polite and hey Jason, I got a question. And just immediately block you. The one thing that where I kind of lost, where I kind of looked at him kind of differently was when he was on Young A show live, and he was like, kind of just really like not being very nice to Young A and just calling him a provocateur and all this other stuff. It's just like, come on, Jason, like stop.
What a hypocritical joke.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you're calling Young a provocateur, but you're in here, you know, you know, name calling and just being, yeah. So anyhow, I'm not a big fan of his.
I'm gonna put it on record just to make sure everybody knows. My problem with Schreier is that guy has never written a line of code in his life, has never been a project manager, has never been in charge of running an effort with an actual deliverable, but yet he goes and he interviews developers who are no longer on the project, who were contract labor, who are not permanent employees of the company, and he assembles what in the developer world that means that's anecdotal evidence, right? So if I have a team of, let's just call it 100 developers, right, and 30 of them have been sent away, right, for whatever reason, and you interview those 30 developers, you're going to get a perspective on the project that is statistically skewed from what the other 70 people would tell you, right? It's an incomplete story, right? But he anchors down on that perspective and reports that as fact, right? And then extrapolates conclusions on that, right? Leveling accusations and castigations at the owning company and the owning development studio. Now, I'm not saying that there's zero scratch to those accusations, right? But they're not levied with any type of levity or caveat or, this is what I understand, but it's not the whole story, right? But he claims that that's the absolute truth.
Yeah.
And then when he's questioned about it, right, then he acts like a little baby.
Yeah, he acts like a child.
On top. And then the final stone is he also came out as what I read as I would call it a shadow Andrew Tate sympathizer. And like if the other stuff didn't send you over the edge, then that absolutely should.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Well, I mean, he was actually called out by Naughty Dog. Actually, someone specifically who was hospitalized, and he had made reference to this individual and said they were hospitalized because of crunch, and that person actually just said no, that's not true. So I mean, his stuff's been called out and corrected by people that he was, writing about. So. But look, real quick, I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you, everyone, by the way, for hanging out with us this evening. Really appreciate it. As always, there'd be no BRAP without everyone here in the live chat, for all those who subscribe, and for those who will listen to the show later on the replay. So thank you again so much. See some usual suspects there in the live chat. See, Falky, you are going to get some numbers next couple hours as it relates to Sony. So just DM me those numbers, man, and kind of give me your thoughts. I'm interested in your perspective. Because I think you are. I think it's Thursday where Falky is, right? He's kind of like a day ahead of us, right? Thursday morning, I think. Yep. Yeah. So Falky, just let me know, man. Just shoot me a DM. He says yes, it is Thursday. To live in Australia, man, I tell you. But we know that the world goes on another day. If the day we stop hearing from Falky, then there's cause for concern here. So, give me a sec here, Hamp. Everyone, do me a favor. I'm going to drop a link here in the live chat. Please do me a favor and retweet the link or drop the link in your favorite social media platform. Let everyone know when we're live. All right, let's get into some gaming-related news. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about the recent update Jason Schreier provided on 343 Industries, developer behind Halo Infinite, and we're going to talk a little bit about The Last of Us Episode 3, which aired this past Sunday. And I got to say, it was I thought it was a great episode, actually. There were some people out there I saw that weren't necessarily thrilled with this episode, but I thought it was a really good episode. We're going to discuss some new Activision controversy, which I think, Hamp, give us some insight to the culture and leadership. But Activision, the chief communication officer, tweeting actually at FTC, which I thought was interesting, and kind of using an old tactic that a certain president, U.S. president, used when he was in office. And then we'll talk about Xbox raising console prices. That actually was announced this week as well. So, I see people saying I did not like Episode 3. All right, we'll talk about Episode 3 in a little bit. All right, Hamp. I do want to talk about you actually brought up and I didn't fit it here in the comment section, or not the comment section, but the title. But there was something interesting I briefly caught this. There was a YouTuber or content creator, right, Hamp, that apologized for watching. What was it? Deepfake adult content. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think it was pornographic deepfakes of like Pokimane and maybe some other female live streamers.
Yeah. So I saw the apology, and I forget I forget who it was, but the streamer that was apologizing, but he was actually crying about like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't really go down the rabbit hole with these deep fake things, and I think that was I think you mentioned there was a woman next to him that was crying too, but I think you mentioned that was his wife. Who was this individual again?
So to be quite honest, I don't know. I caught the story out of the corner of my eye as well.
Okay.
What grated me very largely about it was less so the exact specifics of who was involved and yada yada yada. The notion of live stream personalities, and I've spent 8 years live streaming myself, just messing with the technology and that stuff, and the notion of who are big personalities in the live streaming community falls about as flat as me as those who were supposed to be big personalities in the YouTube podcasting community, as far as their validity and credibility. What bothered me more so was as women would go onto Twitter or other social media and post about this and about this being a problem. And let me preface this by saying you can get your accusations of virtue signaling and me white knighting out now. I've let you guys know before, it absolutely bothers me not one iota. If Great Scott, if there aren't people who say things in an effort to encourage the human race to be better as we evolve forward, then that's just not a society that I want to be a part of. But at any rate,
the Twitch streamer, his name is Atrioc. He's the one that issued the tearful apology next to his wife. Yeah, and he was the one that was watching deepfake pornography of other female streamers. So.
Right. And so what was problematic, I thought, was as women would post about this and say, this is a problem, like this shouldn't be accepted. It was really weird. The two themes were the people who said, yeah, it is bad, but that's just the way it is. That I think is problematic. But even really worse was the people who were trying to normalize it. And they were like, comments like, you girls make money off of this. You've become personalities. You benefit from it. This is just the price that you have to pay. Things like none of you are good gamers. You just get clicks and views because you're cute. And so if somebody takes your image and puts that on animated pornography, then, just suck it up. And that's what you get. And that to me is, like I said, is problematic. That, I mean, the behavior of somebody who would do that is clearly problematic. But the fact that then people would argue to normalize it, I also have a huge problem with. And people who are trying to normalize it, it's kind of a pretty strong indicator that you do it yourself. So, but there we are.
Yeah, I do find it kind of it's weird that people would say, hey, well, because of your influence, your visibility, that it's kind of like it's okay, and or to even like question people who this is impacting, who these videos are being made of, like that people would actually sit there and say, well, why are you upset about, like, why are you complaining about this? Like, and I did see some of those comments in that comment section, that thread where this individual was apologizing. And to me, that's just weird. I mean, I think it's weird to even watch that kind of stuff, like deep fake, whatever, like that's just like, if, to me, that's weird. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But I think it's weird. But I thought it was I thought it was really cringe for people to kind of downplay or to call out people who this has impacted for calling that behavior out. And yeah, it's just weird to me. It's weird. It's very weird. So, yeah, I mean, Hap, did you see anything else like any other like? Because I think was it just one person? Because I don't know who the like I know the person was. It was about Pokemon who that this video was about. Were there any others that were brought up, or was this the only one?
Oh yeah, there's deepfakes out there for many female live streamers. It's not just Pokimane. You know, so I mean, and obviously the technology, right? The technology is can produce thousands, right? There's no, I mean, it's digital. There's no limit. So that cat is out of the bag, so to speak. And unless, yeah, I mean, it would there are things that are done. There are things that are done. I'm trying to figure out a good way to describe it. There are things that are done that enable an ability to track certain images, right, and certain videos, right, in terms of where they've propagated and eventually to their source, and without doing something like that for things of this and for things like this to then have consequences to them, right? Like when when legislation and laws were passed about revenge porn, for instance.
Yeah.
Then there's no hammer to go along with it. So, until you get something of that nature put in place, it's going to continue to be a problem, and it's going to propagate and go wider.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just and apparently Atrioc had this. He was streaming this video while he was streaming live. It showed up on his desktop while he was streaming live. So that was the other thing. So
yeah, so that's another problem. Like, look, I get definitely afraid every time I go. I get definitely afraid every time I go live that I have something on my desktop that is not that I'm embarrassed for people to see, but that will give away like PII or passwords or security information or something like that. And on top of that, then I'm definitely afraid. Every time I've got a bathroom right off of my studio. Kind of like the bathroom on the bridge of the Enterprise, right? And so I'm always worried, like when I step away and go use the restroom, like in the middle of a live stream, that that I haven't muted the mic, or that when I secure the live stream that I've left the camera on or something like that. So yeah, you need to live streamers need to be really meticulous about stuff. And I think what happens is a lot of times some of the big live streamers or people who live stream more frequently just get complacent and don't run their protocols and do their checklists and forget things like that.
Yeah, and actually, and Pokemon actually did come out and talk about this. She did come out and basically shut down claims that users were allowed to sexualize her because of content she's posted in the past. So she's come out and she's spoken about this, and that's the thing. Like whatever content she's done in the past, and I would agree, and I agree with her point. It doesn't give anyone the right to create these deep fake adult videos of her. So like again, I think was one of the comments I think you may have mentioned earlier, like, hey, you do this content, like what did you expect would happen or something? Was that some, or maybe I read that somewhere else, but I feel like I either heard that or read that where one of the comments was like, hey, like what do you expect? Like you put out kind of, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, like I said, I put them in those two different buckets, right? There are the people who kind of like you were saying, right? There were people who were like, hey, celebrities go through this, and like Brad Pitt and guys and girls who are attractive, they know that images and stuff for them are going to get out on the internet and be utilized for for that type of stuff. But again, obviously that doesn't make it right.
No, she's talking about consent. Like that's the problem. There's no consent here.
Right. Yeah. And then like I said, then that second bucket of not only do I feel bad for you, but this is the stuff that happens, but then the outright, you guys deserve it. Like that's just like super sick to me.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's very cringe. But But Hamp, I do want to. Any other thoughts on that? That typical idea is something you want to talk about. And again, we talked about a little bit earlier today. And like I said, I did see that apology of Atriox on Twitter. I did see that going around. So, any other comments on that particular topic, Hamp?
Nope. That's it.
All right. Look, everyone, please do me a favor. Hit the like button. We got like almost 100 people here watching. We got 22 likes. Please do me a favor. Hit that like button. Definitely appreciate it. All right, Hamp. So, Xbox is in the news. So, Hamp, the Xbox. So, Microsoft has increased the price of the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S in Japan. So that was reported yesterday. The console price is going to go up to 5,000 yen beginning February 17th, and I haven't done the conversion. I don't know what so the Series X will go up from the suggested retail price of 54,978 yen to 59,978 yen. The Xbox Series S will go from 32,000 yen to 37,000 yen. I actually didn't do the math on this, Hamp. I don't know what that means in dollars. So, Sergeant saying 5,000 yen equals roughly $40 USD.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's about a $39 increase, but yeah, 39 or 40.
Yeah. So Hamp, I only have one thing to say about this. Look, I don't know about business, Hamp. I'm not a finance guy, but I do know about honesty and integrity. I'm joking. Look, my only comment on this, Hamp, is. When we talked about the price increase of the PlayStation 5 when that happened, and people were dragging Sony through the mud and saying, "Oh, this is how could they? They should, eat the costs." And we're in this, global economic downturn. People trying to put money on the table. People trying to put food on the table. I gotta say, man, this is. We talked about this. We talked about why these companies make the decision they do. We talked about the economic impact or different things that go into these types of decisions. And here we're with Microsoft doing it. And this isn't the first country they've done this, increasing. They've done this twice in India as well. But Hamp, I guess for me it's just a matter of kind of being like, hey, told you so. And all this sensationalism around the price increase of the PlayStation 5. And it just, that was my perspective on this announcement. And I think I may even said this too. I said, when the PlayStation 5 price increases were announced, that, hey, don't be surprised to see maybe Microsoft do the same thing, follow suit. They'd already done it in India. And I said, don't be surprised. I didn't guarantee this would happen, but I said, don't be surprised if we see Microsoft increase the price of the Xbox Series consoles in other markets. So, any thoughts on that price increase, Hamp? Are you surprised by this? Do you think Microsoft should eat the cost?
No, not at all. I mean, I think I suspect, as you and I were talking, for the Sony price increases, as far as we were made to understand, it was almost entirely connected to foreign exchange rates. I think, I'm not positive, that Microsoft's tactical selection of where it chooses to increase prices, has to do with things beyond that. Including, and in the Sony case too, right? Tariffs obviously would have been included as well. But Microsoft's choices of where it's going to increase prices, potentially has to do with the volume of additional business that they do in that country. How much B2B sales they do, how much government to business sales that they do. And other things like logistics and whatever for them getting products into country. But at the end of the day, as we said, when the Sony increased prices, right, these are economic factors and production costs, manufacturing costs, and choices that companies make. No company is obligated to eat the cost. Obviously, at every turn of the screw, they have the option to eat the cost or pass the cost along to their customers, and that's a choice that they make. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. They'll probably get $40 for the one Xbox Series X per week that they sell. And I mean, and that's probably true. But I also think that maybe is a valid reason for increasing price, right? Like if I'm not selling a bunch in a country, who cares if I increase the price, right? I'm not going to make that big of a knock on demand, because demand in that country is already super low.
It's not there, yeah.
So I mean, it's like I said, we said with the Sony thing. To me, this is a huge nothing burger. It's really weird to me how people get all up in arms about foreign exchange rate, about price increases in countries that they don't live in, that they are in absolutely zero way impacted by. The people in those countries, if that bothers them, I understand that. I think there was also a gross overestimation of the impact on demand, because when you increase price on a product that is in very high scarcity, there's still going to be demand for it. And like we talked about then, people got really mad because they felt I sounded elitist, which may be true, but sounding elitist doesn't mean that I'm wrong. When you are a consumer, you are also in competition. You are in competition with other consumers on the market. Different consumers on the market who have different socioeconomic status have different levels of price sensitivity. And so when prices are raised, what that does for a consumer who's in a different socioeconomic status, who isn't as price sensitive, suddenly competition for a scarce product is reduced, right? For some people, that's good. Like, I don't mind it when the price goes up, and that means I don't have to stand in a long line or fight with as many people to get a hold of something. If that price increase is still within my comfort band. So
yeah,
dynamics like that exist, but people acknowledge them.
We could use it. We could use the housing market as an analogy, right? Of that, the increase of pricing or the increase of interest rates price out certain people in the market. Not everyone can get a loan now. So now you have, more inventory, for people who, can still afford, those to borrow money at higher interest rate. So, but the thing that really kind of, and why I kind of brought this up to you is because people were like, taking Sony, and they were saying that, hey, Microsoft would never raise prices, and, Sony's tone deaf and things like that. And it's like, no, it's just, these are what companies do. And this is kind of what we've been talking about on the show for quite some time, that there's just certain decisions companies make that are based on economic realities. And I think you say this is the best, Tamp, that you can't stick your head in the sand. I think, is that you can't stick your head in the sand,
yeah,
that these things don't have an impact. Yeah.
Right. This notion that the gaming market exists on some island isolated from economic factors and financial factors around the world is just really ignorant. And I don't get it. The gaming industry and the gaming market are affected by rising costs of raw materials, as we see TSMC and other foundries raising prices. They're affected by foreign exchange rates. They're affected by banking crises. They're affected by things that make it difficult for companies to borrow money.
Labor
all
cost.
of these things, right? Yeah. I mean, as the Fed just released the labor wage inflation numbers this morning, so all these things affect the gaming industry and the gaming market. And when we see price fluctuations and things like that, then there are economic reasons for them. But like I said, there's a trend of behavior that seems to want to ignore that. And that's not saying that it's right, or you should just eat it, or you should just pay the cost. You should be an adult and make a decision and choose when something's too expensive for you, and it's keeping you from doing things that you should be doing, and choose not to buy things or choose cheaper alternatives. There's absolutely nothing wrong with when Sony raised prices, if that really bugs you and you're actually in the market for a console. That's the other thing, right? People getting irate about price increases for consoles who aren't in the market to buy consoles also don't come across as very genuine to me in their intent. But like, if you're in the market for a console and you really feel personally offended by the fact that Sony raised prices, then buy the cheaper alternative. Buy the Xbox Series X if it's cheaper in your country. Buy the Xbox Series S if it's because it's cheaper. Buy a Nintendo Switch, right? There are multiple options out on the market. You're not entitled to a PlayStation 5. Sony sets a price. You as a consumer get your participation in the market is to choose to buy it or not buy it.
Yeah, and if you don't want to pay $70 for a game, wait for it to go on sale. There's options. There's options. Hold on here. We have Falky with us right now, who wanted to hop on real quick. Falky, what's going on? How are you?
Hey lads, how are we? Having a good day?
Yeah, it's. I'm glad that Planet Earth made it to another Thursday. I was a little worried.
Yeah. It's like sitting in the front seat of the car. I'll be the first one to know we crashed.
Exactly. That's why if I don't see you on like Twitter, social media, don't hear from you, I'm going to be concerned. I'm going to be concerned about what the next 24 hours brings. But no, Falky, thanks for joining us. But yeah, you wanted to jump in, and I guess did you have some insight into the price increase in Japan that Microsoft has for the Xbox?
Yeah, and thank you for letting me gate crash. I tend to do that a lot with your show. Yeah, we did a show back in April or May or something, where we spoke about the Sony one increase globally except for the US. And I suppose it's a similar situation, just the other side of the coin for Microsoft to a degree. But there's some very different and complex circumstances at the moment. Obviously, Sony did their price shift when things were forecast to go a bit not so great for them. And we've seen in the last couple of quarters that they made the right decision as a business, because it's helped them maintain a level of profitability that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And I suspect that when we see the numbers this evening, that they're going to go close to. I think they'll go close to a record quarter for revenue, particularly in gaming. I don't think they're going to do record profits though, because they've got that huge cost increase that goes along with it. But for Microsoft, they've been raising prices in India and a couple of other Asian countries subtly and small increases, but 2 or 3 times over the last 12 months. But the jump in Japan coincides with a few other things that they've had going on. We had the massive layoffs across most of the tech giants, and Xbox wasn't immune from that. There's been a shift in some of their messaging. It's all speculative at the moment, but if you listen closely to how the wind is blowing, some of the games that need a bit more time are going to get rushed out because they can't leave them sit in the oven any longer. They've got to get some revenue coming in. So Japan's had a price increase for its console. They're telling us down here that Australia's going to cop one potentially as well. Again, it's all because of the foreign exchange rates and whatnot. But Microsoft and Xbox have been enjoying better cost side conditions rather than revenue side conditions. But that's starting to deteriorate now. So they need to get their revenue gap is starting to squeeze for their profitability. So there's an awful lot of focus, particularly on the underperforming segments within Microsoft and a lot of the other tech giants. Wasn't great reading their quarterly financial reports from a gaming perspective. Sort of put a bit of a dark cloud over it, but it's not going to be the last we hear of pricing increases on anything. But I think the broader issue around this is, as Hamp and yourself were talking about, is again, we're in a supply side inflation environment, and they're using demand side levers to try and fix it, where they're trying to reduce demand by increasing interest rates and some other activities, increasing prices and whatnot.
Yep.
And again, it comes down to no company in their right mind is going to increase their costs and produce more of something to sell it at the same price if they're not already selling it. and that's not just for gaming consoles. That's everything. That's foods, produced materials, bricks for houses. They're not going to make more of them to stockpile them just to make the price go down, because it's counterintuitive to running a profitable business. So, but yeah, I suppose I just wanted to jump on and just make those couple of comments. Yeah, it sucks. It's not fun for anyone. Same as the last time we did this with PlayStation, to keep the same energy, so to speak. I'm not going to defend it. I understand why they've done it, but I don't necessarily like it.
Yeah, I don't like no. Yeah, Falky, no consumer likes price increases, and I think Hamp just said that. Like when we explained the phenomenon behind these things, it's like we're not saying, oh yeah, like this is okay. It's like, look, we're all consumers. We don't like price increases. I don't. I mean, the Fed just raised rates here 0.25% here in the U.S. today. I'm not a fan of higher interest rates. I'm not a fan of higher interest rates to borrow money. I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to ease inflation. But look, nobody likes to pay more. I get it. But there are certain things, like Hamp says, you can't. Oh God, Hamp, I forget the saying now. Bury your head in the sand, right, Hamp? I think I got that right.
All right.
Yeah, and but Falky, while we have you on, let me ask you a quick question. And I appreciate that insight that you're sharing with us about why these companies make the decisions that you do.
Yep.
Sony is coming out their is it their third quarter?
Yes.
Report tomorrow. So I guess you're gonna see it before we do. But
yeah.
with PlayStation's gaming division, what do you expect to see there?
Oh, now that's an interesting one. So it's 1:40 in the afternoon where I am, and at 6 o'clock in the afternoon is when their live show pops up, and we'll get access to the materials at 5 o'clock. So we get to have a look at them a bit earlier, which is great because I am having Friday off, and I at 5 o'clock and wrapping up for the week. So I'm gonna give myself an hour and read through them and have a look and listen to the webcast. There's some interesting stuff going on when you look at the sales numbers. Jim Ryan said at CES December was the biggest month for PlayStation 5, which means that they've done over, I think their biggest month prior to that was 3.6 or maybe 4 million. No, 3.6 I think it was for a quarter. So they are tracking to have done something like, I think the November numbers was just over 1 million units in the US. So they're talking about some big numbers in terms of console sales, and the consoles aren't selling at a loss. So there should be some decent numbers there. Obviously, they're not exactly raking in profit, but the console units sold will be great. We found out yesterday that God of War Ragnarok cracked 11 million units.
Yeah, 11 million units sold in 3 months. Yeah.
So 11 million units sold at, is it $70 or $80, whatever it is, because it hasn't been on sale yet.
Hey, real quick, Falk. I just want to address. I'm sorry to interrupt you, man. I just want to address something here in the chat. Sir Nick is saying that the PS5 bundle helps it, just like Forbidden West. Sir Nick, they do not count. And actually, it was Game Industry Biz who confirmed this as well, that they do not count the games that are bundled to the PS5 as part of the sales numbers for units sold. So that's so Sir Nick, that is a narrative that's been going around that's not true. So I just wanted to throw. Go ahead.
The further trail. Go ahead, Foggy.
Does it even matter? I mean, this is console warring bullshit 101. So it's bundled so that it's sold. You have the option to not buy the bundle. And it's like saying, well, what's the most successful PlayStation game ever sold then? Well, why is nobody touting Astro's Playroom? There's 30 million copies of that been sold. No one ever talks about it. Why? Because it comes free with a PlayStation 5. Well, who gives a crap? Who cares if it's bundled or not? The fact that there's that many people have got access to that game. So, it's almost like saying, okay, well, if we're going to say that you can't count the bundled sales for those games in their total, well, then take out all the bundled Game Pass numbers, or all the bundled Forza Horizon 5 numbers, or all the Halo Infinite ones, or whatnot.
you know, you can't. It's preposterous to sit there and say that, oh, the game only did well because it was bundled. Well, who cares? They sold 11 million units of it, and if they don't count the bundles in those 11 million units, well, that's great. There's probably 6 or 7 million units then in terms of bundles that you could nearly add to it if you wanted to, if that's the way that it's meant to be done. So, you know, but how does that affect? Doesn't matter, does it?
No, no.
Right.
It's a game
And
that's
let's
out there.
and let's look at the trail of the critical reception of the title, right? Including lots of categories in the Game Awards, and I don't necessarily consider the Game Awards, right? But I'm just starting there, right? In even more category nominations in the DICE Awards, right? And also nominated in many categories in the GDC Awards. So the DICE Awards, remember, as I preach very, very, very often, right, is made up of an academy of industry professionals. So the people who make games have high regard for Horizon Forbidden West, right? The game has been critically reviewed well, is in multiple category nominations for awards. Throwing shade at Horizon Zero West is Forbidden West, sorry, is a really really questionable take. Like if you don't like the game and you don't like PlayStation, that's fine, right? We talk about this all the time. If you don't like something, that's fine, but you need to acknowledge the reality, right? When something is critically reviewed well and accepted as a good game by by a majority of the gaming community. You don't have to like it, right? You can still say you don't like it.
Yeah.
Gran Turismo 7 is not my favorite racing game, right? I've spent more time in Ali World and Need for Speed Unbound than God of War Ragnarok, right? That's just me and my personal tastes. But again, I can't sit here on the panel and say God of War Ragnarok is a bad game or Horizon Forbidden West is irrelevant because it was bundled, right? We need to move to the point where, as I often say, gamers need to accept that that it's possible for two states of being to exist, right? The game can be considered good and you can concurrently also not like it, right?
Yeah. No, or a game could be considered bad and you like it. I mean, like
Right.
I'm a big fan of Rise Son of Rome. And that game is like Metacritic 60. But I like it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite games, launch games of the Xbox One.
Yep.
So, go ahead, Falky.
Sorry, I'm just chuckling along because I'm following along in the chat. Now, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody's comments or opinions or anything like that. It's not my place to tell people what they think is right or wrong. All I do is offer a perspective based on my professional opinion and my experiences, right? But Sir Nick just made a comment that I understand what he's trying to say, but I'm chuckling at it because he says it does help since PS5 consoles by itself is hard to find, but the bundle is everywhere. And he's referring to the bundles helping pump the game numbers up, if that's still what he's meaning to say. That's the point of bundling them, isn't it? You put the game in with the console so that people who want to buy both of them get a slight discount. Now, the discount's probably only going to be $10, maybe even 15 if you're lucky. But what they've done in a lot of instances is they've bundled them and made the bundle on offer to the retailers. Then the retailers are the ones that are responsible, and Forte will be able to tell you about this more than I can. But the retailers will place their orders with the wholesaler or the warehouser or whoever the hell is doing the buying for them, right? For the bundle to be put together and sent to them. They don't roll off the production line at PlayStation in a bundle. It's a request from the retailers. Now, if the retailers are doing it, it's because they're trying to make more coin out of it rather than having just the console by itself and then selling the game separately, because people are more inclined to buy them combined than not. And because the bundle gives you the digital code, not a physical game, unless you're buying a limited edition, the store is actually able to make money off selling a digital code. Because remember, PlayStation stopped selling digital codes, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now? So if you want to dive into the nuts and bolts and washers and screws and every little piece about why they're bundled and how they're bundled and does it affect this and whatnot, if you're going to say one particular line of it just helps pump the numbers up. Well, just, again, so what if it does? So what if it doesn't? There's that many people who have purchased that game. Whether they play it or not is irrelevant. I've got a backlog of 200 plus games that I've bought that I haven't played yet. Should my purchases not count because I haven't played them?
No. I would say no, but yeah, it just, I think for me, it's just become a talking point to kind of try to downplay the success of games having. And I think that's, and it's become more console war than anything else.
Yeah. So 11 million copies sold of a critically acclaimed game as you said, it's been awarded to the hilt. It's been nominated for awards to the hilt, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, but Elden Ring did better." Oh, yeah, who cares? Honestly, who cares? We're sitting here having discussions about multiple titles that are absolutely brilliant, and they're across multiple different genres to appeal to multiple different playing styles. Be happy we've got this level of selection, but we should applaud the fact that a game that was locked to one platform sold 11 million units in less than 3 months. Doesn't matter how they did it, they sold 11 million units in less than 3 months. That is phenomenal, especially since it's a game that is not to the taste of everybody.
Yeah. No, I mean, those are, in 3 months, those are pretty good numbers, really good numbers. So
yeah, and if you want the Xbox equivalent of that, right, as far as pushback and tearing down things that people try to use to throw shade right online, I personally don't really truck with the notion that, when we talk about Forza Horizon 5, right, and the 20 million people played Forza Horizon 5, right, or whatever numbers, right, get put together, the excuse that, oh, well, that's because it's on Game Pass. Now, there's a caveat in there. I have said that the 20 million people played Forza Horizon 5 is bullshit. Not because it's on Game Pass, but because people look at that metric, and that metric is driven by people who download the game and boot it once, right? That's why that's a bad metric. But when a game is popular and lots of people play it, to me, it's irrelevant that it's on Game Pass. Game Pass is simply the Xbox model, right, of delivering games. What matters and what's important is, what is the consumption of a game, what is the engagement of a game, and then how is the game critically reviewed. I think as we go down the path with this industry, and we see these multiple business models and multiple delivery models that are coming along, including cloud and Xbox Cloud Gaming, it's going to become less and less relevant to the conversation, in my opinion, what the delivery mechanism is or what the delivery bundle is. A lot of this stuff about, well, it's free to play, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? What matters is, and I commented on this on Twitter actually a few days ago, what matters is MAU in a lot of cases, monthly active users, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter how I get the game to you. What matters is how many people are engaged with the game. So I think it's just a kind of state of change and evolution of the industry as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hap. Go ahead, Falky.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, excellent points, as always. And I think to tie this back to the original reason I wanted to jump on for a brief amount, I'm going to have to duck off in a minute to another meeting. Monthly active users is important, but there's no standard metric on how these different organisations calculate and state their monthly active users. Now, one popped up yesterday where they said they had, might have been EA, said they had, 540 million unique accounts or something like that. It was a stupidly big number. And the way that they portrayed it was, that is a unique account where effectively somebody has signed up and logged in with a unique ID and a unique email address. But anybody can create a Gmail address and just add a number to the end, and you can just keep going. And a similar thing happens with Game Pass and a few other items where there's no second or third verification point. And I've spoken before about how Activision calculates their monthly active users, where one person could actually equate quite easily to being a count of 10 monthly active users. So when they say they got 320 million monthly active users, it could only be somewhere around the 40 or 50 million mark. There's no way of confirming that because they don't even know themselves. But they've all got a different way of doing it. The key point is they all seem to have this notion of, how do we convert monthly active users to bottom line profit. And at the moment, the only ones that are really doing that, PlayStation and Nintendo and Nvidia are the only three that are offering a subscription service that is translating monthly active users to bottom line profit. All the rest of them are either trying and failing, or they're not even bothering. So there's a need to be very careful when we talk about, who's got more this, more that, who's doing more with what, because this feeds back into the Xbox issue. They keep talking about player counts and monthly active users and all the rest of it. And that is a way of tracking it that they have, but it doesn't give you the full picture on, is one person doing this 4 times, or is this 4 different people? And in the same instance that we used to have the problem where they'll say, like, God of War Ragnarok has been sold, 11 million copies sold in, right? As I sold through, to the consumer. There's 11 million copies of God of War Ragnarok out and about in the wild. Now, that doesn't factor in any second-hand sales or any game pass, like game sharing, anything like that. If they actually went and looked at the 50-odd or 100-odd million PSN accounts that they've got and checked everybody who's actually played it, you'll probably find that number's somewhere up around 30 million. Because last financial year, so this April 2022, as part of a conversation they were having with Q&As, Jim Ryan or someone over at PlayStation, might even been Mark Cerny, was saying that the ratio of sale to play is somewhere like 3.5 times for PlayStation games. So if they sell it once, the average is that one sale gets played 3.5 times. So there's a lot of details that we don't know about how far they reach. But yeah, monthly active users is a bit subjective depending on who we're talking about. But yeah, I agree with Hampy. So they might brag about that many number of players. If you look at the Steam charts and actually, sorry, I'll hop off after this comment, but the is it the Devolver Twitter account and Cult of the Lamb Twitter account? No, it's not Devolver. Angry Birds and Cult of the Lamb are currently having a back and forth on Twitter where they're threatening to belt the crap out of each other. And Angry Birds shared the Steam Play account for Cult of the Lamb, and rightly or wrongly, Cult of the Lamb was a big success last year. Was one of Shuhei Yoshida's favorite games. It erupted out of nowhere, did huge numbers. For an indie game, it did great, right? It's tailed off like it dove off a cliff after a month, and monthly active users on Steam went from stupidly big heights down to a couple of thousand, and it's consistently down around a couple of thousand. So that's saying that people played it, people enjoyed it, then they moved on to the next thing. If they showed the same sort of grasp for things like Forza Horizon and Halo Infinite, and even some of the PlayStation games that are on there, Returnal, Returnal's on there now, isn't it? The Last of Us, not The Last of Us, Uncharted, and some of the other ones, you'd find that they have this massive hit at the start and then they just tail off into bugger all. But that's common with nearly every game, because we get it, we play it, and we move to the next one. Play it, move to the next one. What they're having trouble doing is keeping players engaged, and that's where things like Destiny 2 and some of the other big online multiplayer like Final Fantasy 14 and that have constantly high, and Fortnite's done it for ages, constantly high day in, day out player counts in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. And those games, in terms of monthly active users, generate stupid amounts of revenue. And they're all trying to replicate that. And I just don't think there's enough of us going around in the gaming community to support 6 or 7 of them. So,
no,
I think there's.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a tail to that too. That's inclusive of kind of market uptake, right? That could potentially lead to return customer sales. And Bender of Strings in the chat said engagement to me is a hippy dopey metric. It's not as clear cut and quantifiable as copies sold. And I will definitely agree that it is muddy. but I think it's still an indicator, right? Because one of the things I mentioned is, we pointed to millions of unit sales of Elden Ring, right? But there was a point where its user count, right, its active user count dipped, right? And I'm thoroughly convinced that that's because there are a lot of those sales on Elden Ring were due to zeitgeist, were due to keeping up with the Joneses. A lot of people bought it because they felt like it was the thing that they were supposed to be playing, that they needed to be seen playing it. I often comment about how on Twitter I see dozens and dozens of accounts with the PlayStation or Xbox controller in their hand, socks on their feet, their big screen television in the view and the title screen, and then never see anything on their account ever again about that game. No game clips, no posts, no indicators of a boss battle or that they completed the game. And so, again, that's gonna be impactful when you talk about what is the next thing from Software, right? Are those customers return customers? Do they go back? Do they just go, yep, I thought Elden Ring, as happened to me, right, in one iteration with Monster Hunter, right? When Monster Hunter World came out, it was supposed to be, this is the Monster Hunter game for people who haven't been able to get into Monster Hunter. And I was like, nope, it is not. Right? I came back around for Monster Hunter Rise, right? But things like that, I agree that it's muddy and it may be hard to read those tea leaves, but I think things like that, do have some impact.
Yeah, it's a great point, Hap. And a great point as well too, Fuck. I certainly appreciate that insight as well. Fuck, can you stick around longer, or do you got to go?
I can probably give you about another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I got to scoot.
Okay, because you're a big gaming fan, and so I just wanted to kind of talk about the latest. Just report that we talked a little bit about Jason Schreier earlier, but Jason Schreier did put out an article yesterday regarding 343 Industries, and he talked about that look, they're looking to switch game engines now from the Slipspace engine to I believe it's Unreal. I forget what Unreal Engine. I think it's Unreal Engine 5. Is that the one they're looking to switch to?
I think I read that they were going to shift over to Unreal, but I don't recall if it was 4 or 5. But you would think it'd be 5.
Yeah, I don't recall either. Yeah, yeah. It looks like the article. I have it up here. I'm just seeing Unreal Engine, but I don't think it specifies which engine they're working on.
I will ask. Was it yourself a week or two ago on one of your shows where you're talking about moving away from proprietary engines to these more mainstream engines makes it easier to hire and fire? Was it you or was it someone?
I don't know. Hey, did we talk about that a couple weeks ago? That's kind of sounds familiar.
I haven't been on for about 3 or 4 weeks since I'm no longer a regular cast member on the show. However, I wasn't involved in that specific conversation, but absolutely, it's kind of funny, Falky, you bring it up because I've had this argument with very vigorous energy with many of my peers when we have to come to make these decisions. And I say, when somebody says, hey, I want to build something on .NET and I need an IIS server and I'm going to use VB Script. And I said, we're not building on that because that's not what the kids are going to school for. That's not who's coming out onto the job market. We're not going to build on antiquated technologies that it's going to be hard to hire for when we're trying to build something with lower total ownership costs. Yeah. And when it's harder to find those people, they're more expensive, right? So what do you build? If I build something in Java, I cannot.
But I'm sorry, Hamp,
Hamp,
real quick. Yeah, great point. Yeah. Great point, by the way, because you're right. When you have more antiquated things, like engines, like the Slipspace is old, built on very old technology. But you're right. Like when you start to find those people that are subject matter experts, costs money.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in this case, I don't know that Slipspace is that old. However, obviously, when it's a proprietary engine, you don't hire somebody off the street who knows the Slipstream engine, right? You have to train them, you have to grow them. Versus, I could probably go out and find several dozen developers who have experience with Unreal Engine. So it makes it easier to hire people. unfortunately, those people may also be commodities, right, and are easily replaceable. So as Falky mentioned, it may also be easier to let them go. Probably lots of resources available on the market who are independent contractors.
Yeah. And real quick. Yeah.
Sorry, to touch on that, or to expand on that, people look at the gaming industry and they think it's very unique, but the way that the projectness of it works is very similar to major construction. When they bring on a massive workforce to do these sky-rise buildings or these big tunnels or these big road projects or whatnot, they're there for a couple of years. And then that project finishes and then they all move on to whatever the next thing is, right? And the reason why all those projects, and construction's down to a fine art now because it's for this very reason. All the engineers talk the same. They have all the same sets of rules and guidelines and everything they're working to. The concrete's all the same. The Rio bar and all that. The whole thing, doesn't matter where you do it in the world, constructing a major building's all got the same stuff that goes into it. And different people provide it, but still the same stuff. And because of that, the labor can be shifted around quite easily. But if you go and do something that's very bespoke, heavily customized, and is not easy to do, you got to go and get specialist labor. Like, say you want to build a house now, but you want to do a completely old style split log cabin, something like that. You're going to pay through the nose to get people to build that because they don't exist, and you're very hard to find. If you want to go and build a brick house, so that's standard as everything else, they'll slap one together in a month for you. And people will climb over each other to try and get that work. So it's very important, and I think it's very underrated and under-discussed, that if you're going to make an attempt to do something that is an improvement, you really need to look at what's out in the marketplace in terms of what can I get, what can I use that'll get me my result, but allow me to get access to resources at the rate and speed that I need them.
That all being said, I have not been a proponent of the dogpiling and immediate poo-poo that gets slung whenever people hear, when people hear that, there's a forced march into a proprietary engine. Proprietary engines make sense. Commonality of technologies within a corporation makes sense. It makes it easy once you do train people to use it. You can transfer that technology, so you can move people around. This is one of the things that I commented about Ubisoft back when they were regarded as a good developer in-house. They trained lots of people up on a common engine, and what that meant was if there was a developer at Red Storm who had down cycles and wasn't fully utilized at 100%, that person could be a fungible resource. It could be diverted to work remotely on a project to back up Ubisoft Montreal, right? Because they were all working in a common technology. What's super interesting is all of the hate that gets spun for Frostbite, and Need for Speed Unbound is done in the Frostbite engine. And ostensibly the Frostbite engine was not built for racing games, right? And this is one of the things I mentioned when people threw shade at EA forcing people to use Frostbite because for things that weren't shooters. And I'm like, the engine is the engine. It is relatively agnostic to the game. There's tooling and utilities that grow around the engine based on what purpose it is pointed at, right? And this is why Unreal has advantages, because tons of people use it, so tons of people build tools, so there are tons of things available on the marketplace, and it's easy to find the things that you need and to reuse assets and reuse code, right, for multiple genres. And so if you are going to use a proprietary engine, you have to cultivate it and you have to grow it. And one of the things I talked about with Frostbite is like you can't have Frostbite. You can't have Frostbite maintained by DICE Studios and have those people still physically sit geographically co-located with the managers and leaders at DICE, right? You have to break that team away. You have to isolate them. You have to make their job maintenance of that engine for the good of the corporation. Because what's going to happen is when they have 40 hours in a work week and somebody walks over from the DICE studio itself and says they need you to do something, it doesn't matter what help calls or tier 3 support ticket you have in to provide support for Frostbite Engine for some studio on the other side of the world. You're going to do what your bosses who are immediately there located with you. And that's one of the tales of Frostbite, why other teams who were using it didn't get the attention that they needed, didn't get the technical support that they needed. But again, as we can see from its application in Need for Speed Unbound, there is no such thing as, well, Frostbite Engine is only usable for first-person shooters. It needed to have tools and utilities built up around it that allowed it to be leveraged for other genres.
Yeah, that's a great
Almost,
point. Yeah, go ahead, Funky.
Sorry. Apologies for the delay. I don't mean to keep talking over you.
Oh, no, you're good, man.
It's almost the reverse of what they did with the Decima engine with Guerrilla. They took it from being a first-person shooter engine back to being an open world engine so they could do Horizon. And now, that's sort of the standard proprietary engine that's being rolled out within PlayStation Studios. Ben's using it. Sprite's using it for 2 of their games, I think. They don't tend to use Unity too much at PlayStation. They usually go for Unreal Engine if they need an easier one to use. But they've got a heap of proprietary engines over there that they share the tech, like the stuff that Naughty Dog does with their engines, different to the Sony Santa Monica engine, and all the different ones there. But to circle back to the original question, sorry, I sidetracked this. 343 shifting over to Unreal is going to give them benefits that they really need, provided that management don't try and go the cheap and nasty on this. But I'm still yet to be convinced that 343 is not going to be anything more than a caretaker 20-person team overseeing a huge amount of contractors coming in to build something. I've got my different opinions on what I think Xbox's future looks like. I don't particularly subscribe to the notion that they're going to rebuild that team and bang out another Halo. I fear that 343 might even end up on the chopping block completely, but there's other factors at play. But to shift to a proprietary, a non-proprietary, but a more mainstream engine would just allow them to get stuff done. It can't hurt with the pipeline issue that they had. They took, 2.5 or 3 years of building Halo Infinite in the old engine, in the Halo 5 engine, before they shifted it into the new engine and then had to rebuild half of it anyway. And they did that they shifted it less than 12 months out from when the Xbox Series launched, expecting it to be ready to play. So there's the engine shift is good. I don't think that's going to solve all the problems that they had. But I think they've let go most of the people that were there that could tell them how to fix the problem anyway. And the management that caused the disaster is still at Xbox. So, it can't be bad. I mean, retire that old shit. It needs to be put to bed. But, I've said a few times before, if they've got the opportunity to shift to a new engine and give it another crack, let ID Software have a go at making a Halo game. They've certainly got the credentials to do a first-person shooter that works well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know people have kind of flirted with that idea of maybe they should bring in some of the other studios from ZeniMax, it being one of them. So, but just for some context here, like the Slip Space Age is actually based on old code from the 1990s and early 2000s.
That's true of many engines, right? The Call of Duty engine has Quake code still in it.
Yeah.
I mean, so when I talk about how old is the engine, I orient around the Slipstream engine really coming to being in this baseline variant with Halo 5. We're talking about a 7-year-old engine, which in programming language terms, in engine terms, I don't know is that old. It's not current modern, I guess, if you want to coin that term, like the Decima engine. Like, it's not something that came into being with a game that's released in the last 2 to 5 years. But I don't know that I think of it as necessarily antiquated. Now, my belief from things that I see is, as I've hinted at before, I think that there are some deep-rooted architectural problems with that engine itself and some of the things they've built for Halo Infinite that, as we've talked about, are the types of things that once you code yourself into a corner and you put a lot of good code on top of potentially bad code, you get yourself to a point where you're not going to be able to code yourself out of that, and you're all it's like I kind of say it's the Friday afternoon, Monday morning ship or car. It's just wonky and it ain't never going to be right. And so that's when you start looking at things like massive excavations of part of the code, and replacing if not doing a full rewrite.
No,
so I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hamp. Yeah, so it's gonna be. I'm curious to see kind of what happens with the future of Halo. I mean, we did find out that they weren't working on any DLC campaign content, that they were kind of pitching new ideas for Halo behind the scenes, and there's still some multiplayer game modes that, according to this report, that are nearly finished. Extraction, Assault being the two, and according to the reporting here, that those modes haven't been released because of some of the issues involving the engine. So, but go ahead, Falk. I think you were getting ready to chime in. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. I do have to slip off. I got another meeting to jump into. Thanks for letting me gate crash.
Yeah, absolutely,
again.
Man.
Good to chat with the two of you. I'll put some stuff up and send some stuff out this evening, with some initial thoughts when I read those reports. But I expect that PlayStation, or the gaming and network services for Sony is going to be should be quite healthy. It might, like as I said, I was somewhat expecting potentially a record revenue, but again, because they had that the beautiful exchange rate going in their favor, but I don't think that'll translate into necessarily an increase in their net profit. But I suspect that there'll be some positive stuff in and amongst it. It'll just take a little bit of digging, but yeah. I mean, record a number of console sales in a month, and stupid like 7 or 8 million units sold of one of their marquee games is certainly going to help give them a good bump. So,
yeah.
Anyway, thanks for having me, and I'll keep listening in, but I got to jump on a meeting. So, be safe and enjoy.
You too, Falky. Thank you again. Always a pleasure. Please send me those DMs when those numbers come out. I'm interested in get your perspective as well. So, thank you.
Will do. See ya.
All right. See you, Falky. All right. We're going to go to the this next topic. What I've called the new Activision controversy. And actually, all jokes aside, it has to do with the chief communications officer for I'm getting old, Hamp. My mind just went blank. Activision. I just said Activision too. Jesus, man. Hamp, should I start drinking? Is the secret as you get older just to drink more coffee? Is that what I need to start doing?
That's at least the temporary fix. That'll get you through for like an hour, and then you can start drooling back in your cereal.
Oh my god! Oh my god, that's too funny. All right, so Lulu, oh god, I can't pronounce her last name.
Messervy. Which is quite apropos because I just think of her as messy. So
as Messervy. Okay. So Messervy, who is the chief communications officer at Activision, is pulling. Look, and I tweeted this out, Ham. I said, look, what she's doing here reminds me of a certain playbook by a certain former president of the United States. And no, I'm not talking about Sleepy Joe. Well, I did say former, so he's the current. But yeah, so another the previous president of Sleepy Joe, and I was kind of like. To be honest with you, Hamp, I was kind of surprised that she but direct tweeted the FTC about The Last of Us on HBO and the success that show is seeing. And she actually tweets at the FTC and says, "Hi, FTC. Did you catch last night's episode of The Last of Us? It was incredible. No wonder the show is breaking records. It's a true blockbuster. Watched by tens of millions. If you haven't already, you should check it out." I thought that was actually quite funny. You may be particularly interested in the fact that, and she actually posts the screenshots, a tweet by Kelly McLaughlin, who says The Last of Us HBO continues to prove they can be the greatest video game to TV adaptation ever. I'm in awe. And then she goes on to further tweet, The Last of Us is produced by Sony Pictures Television and PlayStation Productions. It's based on a best-selling video game developed by a Sony-owned studio and published by Sony as a PlayStation exclusive. Why does this matter? The FTC has opposed the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal on the grounds that Microsoft could suppress competition from rival consoles by leveraging Activision games. It sounds like there's some worry that Sony's position as market leader could be jeopardized by this deal. Now, here we go. That piece right there to B Hamp is she's getting ready to stir the pot. You know what I mean? Like the big handles in there. She's getting ready to stir the beans. But there's no cause for concern. Sony has unrivaled war chest of IP, not just in gaming, but TV, movies, and music, which can be developed into games or can market existing games. Case in point, the TV show The Last of Us is already generating renewed interest in that game, which she's not wrong. I mean, there's some numbers out there that we've seen, at least the numbers I've seen from the UK reported by GameIndustry.biz, where there's been like a 300 or 400% increase. I got to go back and look in sales for The Last of Us. But she goes on to say that Sony's talent and IP across gaming, TV, movies, and music are formidable and truly impressive. It's no wonder they also continue to dominate as the market leader for consoles. Now, this is where she really digs into the pot. And this is why I say this is kind of reminiscent of a certain former president of getting everybody riled up. And when I mean everyone, the diehard Xbox fans that are pom-pomming this deal and really want this deal to go through. She says, and she's pushing this narrative that some of these extremist Xbox fans do. In gaming, Sony is the first of us, play on The Last of Us, and they'll be just fine without the FTC's protection. And that's that narrative that we've heard from a lot of extremists. And look, I say extremists. I'm not saying all Xbox fans are extremists, but there's an extremist group in the Xbox community that's been pushing that the FTC is protecting, Sony's position as market leader, and that this is a political witch hunt by Lena Khan. They've even called for the removal of Lena Khan. People have even said that the FTC is violating Microsoft's due process or Fifth Amendment rights. Jesus. So, but here she is. She is the corporate communications officer. She is a vice president at Activision, executive vice president at Activision. And she's tweeting this. And I'm just, Hamp, I got to be honest with you, man. It reminded me of a certain president that used to do this, used to go on social media, kind of rile the base, get people foaming at the mouth, and, get people to go after the FTC. And that's what in my opinion, that's what she's doing here. But what's also funny, Hamp, and you brought this up, there's some irony here with her, right?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Rep.
There's some irony here with I can't pronounce her last name. With
Lulu.
With Lulu.
Lulu.
Is there some irony here? Her now all pom-pomming this deal, and what was it that she did, Hamp? Or what? Yeah. So go ahead, man.
So I had to step away for a second. But I've been very big on trying to cover the chronology of this individual. So if you're going to put something in your body, you should know where your food came from, so to speak. That's my analogy for tonight.
That's a great analogy.
So the first thing to understand is this person was part of the brain trust at Substack. If you're not familiar with Substack was kind of a publishing organization that claims that it's not a publishing organization. As a matter of kind of legally protecting itself. It provides a refuge and a haven for people who are kind of, I would say, provocateur kind of writers who kind of write articles that are deliberately driven to kind of be polarizing and poke the bear. Was just frequently. Substack is kind of one of those companies that frequently, kind of like OnePlus did back in the day, where they would just kind of do some tone-deaf things and say some tone-deaf things, and that's kind of what Substack was. And she was part of that brain trust. She was then appointed as a member of the board of directors of Activision. So if you're not familiar with kind of the track of the track record of behavior of the board of directors of Activision. These are a group of individuals who, as Kotick would be accused of, there would be allegations of things that he had done in the past. The thing that was most shocking to me about the board was that they would immediately close ranks around Kotick. Before the tail of the tape had come out, before all the information, they did this several times. And as I watched this happen, having seen scandals go down, right, with government officials and things like that, situations I've been close to, I was kind of like, I think in this case, I would maybe wait, maybe pump the brakes on like immediately jumping to that individual's defense and just wait to see kind of what came out and how much evidence there was around it, and not be, first to jump in front of them. So that's the track record. This is an individual who has proven herself pretty loyal, right, to Kotick. She comes into a job to replace the former communications officer who filled a position in Bush's cabinet, and kind of had, I think she was a big defender of the policies at Guantanamo Bay, if that's what I remember correctly. And I'm not saying that I disagree with the policies at Guantanamo Bay, but that was kind of the track record and some of the things that were mentioned about her. So Lulu, Messervy stepped into this role. She stepped down from the board of directors and assumed this role. And since then, she has written posts like this, vehemently preaching and rallying the troops in support of the merger. In October of 2022, she posted in a read-only Slack channel comments that are unquestionably, undeniably union busting. So all sorts of comments meant to incentivize employees to not vote in favor of a union. This was a read-only Slack channel, and so employees could read in the Slack channel, but could not make comment in the Slack channel. But many of those employees did make comments about it on Twitter. And there were snapshots and pretty corroborated evidence that this was something that she had done. So then she's come out and made these comments in support of the merger. The problem that I personally cited with this on Twitter is that, we have lots of people who speak up in support of the merger on the basis that they have a very high concern for the well-being of the employees at Activision and want them to fall underneath Microsoft's umbrella, because Microsoft, having signed a union neutrality agreement in June of 2022, after being in existence for 47 years, seemed to feel that that's indicative that Microsoft is now all of a sudden pro-union. And so they have heightened concern about the well-being of the employees and want this merger to go through. If that is your case, I have a problem with you then pom-pomming, cheerleading, rallying, grabbing your torches and pitchforks and flying off to the FTC Twitter account and the Lena Khan account on the basis of what this PR flack and hack has radicalized people to do on Twitter. Again, this is a person who is academically trained to do this exact type of thing. And for people to kind of fall for it and use it as a catalyst to go off and do things is very hypocritical. This is the person who should undoubtedly be walked out the door with Kotick if the deal does go through. This is a person who is part of a group who has not held Kotick accountable and hasn't made him answer for these things. And that's not consistent with somebody who supposedly has a high degree of concern for the employees' well-being at Activision.
That's a great point, Ham, and I think for me, at least it gives me some kind of insight into the mindset, leadership at Activision, and kind of goes, and I kind of think about Kotick, and I kind of think about her approach of one, trying to union bust, two, trying to get people using propaganda, trying to get people to go at the FTC by saying things like the FTC is protecting Sony. There's no. That is a one, I think it's a ridiculous accusation, but two, she's an executive EVP and she's out on Twitter doing this. And like, there's no one saying to her, hey, maybe pipe it down a little bit. Maybe, but again, I think this goes back to kind of at least for me, Hamp, I think this gives me a little bit of insight into Kotick and the mindset of leadership there. and that toxicity that we've heard so much about Activision. And I think you see her giving us a glimpse of that behavior. And but I agree with you. It's funny seeing people champion this person because, oh, she's calling out the FTC, and then, you know, they praise Activision for unions and Microsoft for allowing unions, but this same person was actively trying to union bust. And that's what I found. That's what I kind of chuckled when I read this when I read this tweet from good old Lulu. I still can't pronounce her last name. So
yep.
Yeah, and I think she was like, "Why am I being accused of right wing something?" I think I got to go back and look at the tweet. She even brought that up, like, and it's like, well, you're posting in a right wing, you know. But anyhow, I'm not trying to make this political, but yeah, go ahead, Hamp.
That was it. And I also did want to give a shout out to the person who corrected me when we were talking about Halo and said that I was calling it the slipstream engine because that is a term that I very, very frequently use in program management. It's actually slipspace. Yeah.
Yeah, slipspace. So, all right. I was going to talk about the Last of Us episode 3, but Hamp, you haven't watched the television show yet, right?
I have not. I'm not interested in the television show. But
yeah. I'm gonna probably do another show just to talk about that. I was hoping Slimmo would be on, and may get Slimmo or maybe one of the other BRAP panel members who's watching the show to talk about episode 3, because I thought it was a really good episode. And they did a really good job of fleshing out, some of the characters that are either discussed in game or characters that you briefly meet in the Last of Us video game. So we'll talk about that later time. But on that note, it is 10:30. Hamp, we're going to wrap up early, man. It is 10:30. We're going to hit a wrap up. And look, I just want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. Really appreciate it. Please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're new to the show, consider, yes, Nick Offerman was great on that episode. I'll talk about that too. But do me a favor, hit the like button if you're new. Consider subscribing, hit the bell notifications so you're alerted when we go live. And, we'll probably do like a separate BRAP rant on episode 3 of The Last of Us. But Hamp, man, always a pleasure, man, talking shop with you. Hopefully we get on some more Halo Infinite this week. Because, look, despite the troubles at 343i, man, that multiplayer is, I think, great, man. I'm having a blast playing it. Having a blast. So, but Hamp, if you want to be found, man, let everyone know they can find you.
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is Cole says in the chat, Microsoft will be good to workers as they hold the door for them after their last day at work. Cole says, too soon, man. Too soon. Yeah, if anybody wants to catch up with me, I'll be here occasionally. But also, if you want to catch up with me regularly, I'm one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. Both the channel's name and the name of the podcast, that is the number 2, not the word 2. So if you ever want to swing by and listen to a couple software engineers and a university professor and a hardware engineer talk about video games, we try and talk about some of the technology and some of the finances in the gaming industry. So please feel free to stop by, or it's also we post it on SoundCloud and Spotify and Pocket Cast, so you can also download it and listen to it on your morning commute or while you're working out, mowing the lawn, or what have you.
Absolutely. Hamp, and I just want to say one more thing. Chick-fil-A is anti-consumer, and Popeyes, they care about people. And I'll just leave it at that.
That's true, man. Chick-fil-A comes into a region and does all that money hatting for regional exclusives, and I don't know about business, but I know that's not the way to pursue honor and integrity. So
it's not.
Trust Popeyes, eat Popeyes. I mean, who asked for a chicken menu with no chicken pieces on it, no family dinner? Who asked for that?
Yeah, who asked for no sides on the menu?
Just preposterous.
Who asked for a fast food restaurant to be closed on a Sunday? I didn't ask for that.
That's right. That's right.
That's anti-American right there. All right, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Again, hit the like button, and if you're new, subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. So we'll catch you next time. Oh, and actually give me a follow if you're not following me on Twitter, BRAP_podcast as well. That way you can get updates on when the show goes live. Like I said, I'll probably do a show, I don't know, maybe sometime this weekend on episode 3 of The Last of Us, because I definitely want to talk about that. So, but yeah, on that note, we're out. Everyone have a great evening. Till next time.